Hello everyone, welcome back to Literary Theory, Lesson 5, The Linguistic Turn. Today we are going to study about the transition or movement from liberal humanism to literary theory. If you remember, you will see a definition of liberal humanism given above like this. Liberal humanism refers to the approaches to literature from the era of Plato to new criticism. Liberal humanism refers to the approaches to literature from the era of Plato up to new criticism. It was after new criticism that a transition from liberal humanism to literary theory took place. In order to understand more about the transition, let us examine new criticism. I think you are familiar with the new criticism, but let us see the basic tenets of new criticism in order to understand the transition from liberal humanism to literary theory. New criticism was a formalist literary criticism that emerged in 1920s and dominated until early 1960s. It appeared as a reaction toward biographical and traditional historical criticism, which was focused on extra text materials such as biography of the author, etc. The term new criticism was taken from John Crowe Ransom's 1941 essay of the same title. This is the book by John Crowe Ransom, from which this particular name, the new criticism, emerged. So as I have said right now, new criticism emerged as a reaction against biographical criticism, which focuses on the biography of the author for interpreting the poem or a work of literature. Instead, new criticism focuses on close reading, especially poetry, without considering the external materials. Only the poetical text is considered for interpreting it. So new criticism focus on close reading of the text without any external materials, without considering the biography of the author, the background of the author, the intention of the author while writing the poem. Such features are ignored. Instead, only the text is considered, the language of the text, the figures of speech used, the expressions used, the idioms and phrases used. Such factors are considered. No external materials are considered. Thus, new critics gave importance to the language of poetry. New critics argued that the author's intention behind a work is not important in interpreting a work. Instead, the meaning generated by the language, style, and formal features should be focused while interpreting. This focus of new criticism on language brought it closer to literary theory. So, we are talking about a transition from liberal humanism to literary theory. In fact, New criticism is standing in between liberal humanism and literary theory. The, the focus of new criticism on language brought it closer to literary theory. No criticism before new criticism paid such close attention to language of texts or read them so closely. If we examine the works of theorists like Roland Barthes and Jacques Derrida, we see parallels with new criticism in terms of their attention to language and form. These Roland Barthes and Derrida, both of them belonged to, both of them were theorists, literary theorists or cultural theorists. So if you examine the work of Derrida or Roland Barthes, you will find a close parallel with new criticism in terms of their attention to language and form. It was in 1950s that structuralism emerged from the work of the linguist Ferdinand de Saussure. It was from the work of Ferdinand de Saussure that structuralism emerged. Saussure's work was very much important in bringing the attention or focus towards the language. See, the title of the topic we are discussing here, the linguistic turn, or turning the focus of analysis of a text to the language, really happened with the advent of structuralism. Listen once again. The linguistic turn or turning the focus of analysis of a text to the language really happened with the advent of structuralism. That means it was with the advent of structuralism that this linguistic turn took place. Linguistic turn means the change of focus to language aspect of the text, or the linguistic aspect of the text is called linguistic turn. Jonathan Culler described structuralism like this. Structuralism is an attempt to describe the language of literature in linguistic terms so as to capture the distinctiveness of literary structures. See, when we are talking about literature, we won't usually consider it as a linguistic activity. We are focused on the meaning produced by the literature. However, structuralists, new critics, they focused more on the linguistic aspect of literature. This shift of focus to the language caused the paradigm shift from liberal humanism to literary theory. Paradigm shift means a fundamental change in the approach or underlying assumptions. Here, the shift from liberal humanism to literary theory is called the paradigm shift. So, a change in the approach or assumptions. So, that is the linguistic turn. That is the focus to the language, the change of focus to the language aspect of the text. So, we are stopping here. Thank you.